Hello, it's Big Cheds. I'm back with another episode, another chapter of My Battles with Cancer, a candid patient and caregiver's memoir. I'm a cancer survivor, and I was a caregiver when I took care of my mother. I wrote about my experience as a way to help myself and to help other people. And now, after publishing it on Amazon, Kindle paperback and audiobook, I'm doing it for free on YouTube at Cheds Trading. I'm reading one chapter at a time. That's what this is. I've also published trading quotes and trading wisdom previously, but this is my battles with cancer. So where are we in the story? We are at Palliative Care Team. We're about halfway through part 2. Mom's cancer has spread, and I'm pretty frustrated. So here we are, Palliative Care Team. A few weeks had elapsed since the last time I was at the hospital, and now it was time to return for Mom's follow-up appointment. She was scheduled to meet with the Palliative Care Team that day, and I wanted to come along to offer my support. I knew that Mom had many questions she was itching to ask, centered around how to be more comfortable at home and how to properly deal with the side effects of her chemotherapy regimen. I was also curious to hear what these folks had to say. According to WebMD, palliative care is if you've been diagnosed with a serious, long-lasting disease or a life-threatening illness. Palliative care can make your life and the lives of those who care for you much easier. Palliative care can be performed along with the care you receive from your primary doctors. With palliative care, there is a focus on relieving pain and other troubling symptoms and meeting your emotional, spiritual, and practical needs. In short, this new medical specialty aims to improve your quality of life, however you define that for yourself. Mom was driving in separately this day, so once I arrived at the hospital, I set off on my own to meet up with her. After I passed by the front desk, I again noticed just how many people were there with hospital plastic bracelets on, and I empathized with them. I knew a lot about what they were going through, feeling sick, vulnerable, and in desperate need of care. That day, I was happy to be no longer feeling that way myself. It was incredibly important for me to shed that identity because for so much of my time over the prior months, I had been feeling sick and vulnerable. And I was trying to get past that point to reach a place where I felt strong and durable again. Mom was already there waiting for me, sitting in the reception area, and I gave her a big hug. As we talked while waiting for her name to be called, I could not help but notice that I was feeling dejected. All those emotions that had been bubbling up beneath the surface made me think that perhaps her cancer was in fact winning. And that idea made me extremely angry. More than just angry, I was furious with the cancer, wanting to ask it, how dare you attack my mother? This was my mother, my own flesh and blood, and this assault crossed a line. Stewing in my emotions, I kept looking for a way to be strong and for an outlet to gather my thoughts and my emotions, and thinking about how mad I was at the cancer gave me some sense of resolve to win the fight, to help Mom and to give her as much support as I could. To pass the time while we were waiting, I looked around and I scanned the room, and I saw a teenage male with bright blue eyes being pushed around in a wheelchair by his mother. You could see the top of his head was completely shaved, and there was a large scar running almost the full length from his temple to the back of his neck. My guess was that this young man had just had some type of surgery to remove a tumor from his brain, and I felt absolutely horrible for him. I could not imagine what that must feel like. What struck me, however, was that while his mom was pushing him around, this young man was just talking on his cell phone and acting like a normal kid. He didn't seem broken down or defeated in any way by his plight, and he was just pushing forward and living his life. I found that to be inspirational. Similarly to when I saw that young child with two large tumors in her neck, I was impressed with the ability of this young man not to let his situation hold him back. From the outside looking in, you would assume that his condition would be overwhelming. But to see him carrying on the way he was reminded me of the great strength of the human spirit. After a short wait, Mom's name was called, and a nurse took us to meet with the palliative care team. Mom had a lot of questions for them, and they were extremely patient in their effort to answer as best as they could. Mom asked them about her diet and what was safe to eat and what was not, and most especially, what would help her recover from each chemotherapy session. She also asked the palliative care team what kind of quality of life she could expect going forward. Would she have enough energy to run errands and do normal things like going to the movies and having lunch with her friends? She emphasized just how important those activities were to her emotional well-being. Mom then asked several medical questions, and one of them, clarification about the possibility of immunotherapy for her cancer. The medical oncologist had suggested that there may be a way to treat her cancer with immunotherapy down the road. The nurses looked at each other and then quickly shot that idea down, saying that there was nothing they could see in Mom's medical file to suggest that immunotherapy would be an option. In response, Mom told these nurses it was frustrating to be given such mixed information. The nurses indicated that they understood and they apologized. They explained that it's common in these types of situations for things to get mixed up. After the meeting ended, we thanked the palliative care team for their time and we left. And even though Mom and I were disappointed to hear that immunotherapy was not an option, she felt better after having many of her questions answered. As late summer turned to early fall, and as the temperature continued to drop, I slowly continued to return to a normal life post-chemotherapy and radiation. My challenge was coming to terms with a new normal that included Mom going for chemotherapy every 2 weeks. She seemed to be doing much better after her second cycle, and the nausea and other side effects did not bother her as much as they had for the first cycle. So it was nice to know that she was adapting a bit. By the time the third appointment rolled around, Mom let me know that I didn't need to accompany her anymore. Up until now, I had been to every major appointment, and I immediately worried about Mom going to the hospital without me and sitting all alone while receiving her medicine. Thinking about Mom, I recalled all the faces I had seen of other patients receiving chemotherapy without anyone there to support them, and I did not want Mom to be one of them. Sensing my trepidation, Mom told me that she had several other appointments that day, and she insisted that she would not have any time to visit with me. Mom was set to meet with the nutritionist, the social worker, and genetic counselor, and emphasized that I did not need to come. I protested, and I told her quite frankly that I did not feel good about the idea of missing her chemotherapy session. I told her that it's one thing to have the company of hospital workers, but another thing entirely to have your own family there with you during a tough time. She again insisted that I should not come, and I got the hint that perhaps she wanted some privacy and time away from family members that day, so we left it at that. Later in the week, we were able to catch up, and I asked Mom about how she was doing, wanting to hear about all those appointments, and she told me that they went well, and she was doing her best to manage the nausea. And though she felt okay, she mentioned that she had a noticeable lack of energy. We also talked about this book, and I asked her if she had a chance to read it yet, and I was looking forward to seeing her notes. In addition to wanting that editorial feedback, I was hoping that by reading about my experience with cancer, Mom could gain some wisdom about how to deal with her cancer. She was proud to report that she had read the book from cover to cover and was beginning to make some corrections. In response, I asked her if she enjoyed reading it and if it had helped her to work through any of the tough feelings that she might be dealing with. She told me that it was an emotionally draining experience for her. She explained that she felt as if she was, quote unquote, living in cancer all the time, either at the hospital for treatment or at home resting. And when she was at home resting, she was also reading my book about cancer. So it was hard for her to escape that topic. A few days after Mom's fourth treatment, I went to visit her again, and she seemed to be recovering well from her chemotherapy session. It felt like it had been a long time since I had seen her, so I was eager to catch up. And she was happy to see me as well, and excited to show me her editing notes from that book draft. All right, next chapter will be patient and patient. Mom and I are both patients at the hospital at the same time. We'll talk about that. This is My Battles with Cancer, a patient and caregiver's candid memoir. I talk about my experience fighting cancer, recovering from cancer, and then taking care of my mom when she had cancer. I'm making this book free for anybody, and that's why I'm reading one chapter at a time here on YouTube as Cheds Trading. You can also check out my work on Amazon along with my other books, Trading Quotes and Trading Wisdom. I'll be back with another chapter soon. Thank you so much for listening. Take care.